Now that we've written down some ideas that we want in our website, we need to talk about how we're going to set up our Photoshop file so that we can at least get the basics of our design mockup off to our graphic designer or web developer. Now, all websites come in different dimensions, and with phones and tablets and different monitor sizes, it's hard to pick the perfect size for a website. And this is best left to the graphic designer or the web developer as you begin working on the site, because there's a lot of variables that come into play in picking the perfect dimensions. So let's go ahead and talk about dimensions real quick. I'm going to take my brush here and I'm just going to draw a basic monitor. And this is like a new monitor that I use, and this is a pretty standard format. And the resolution of my monitor is 1920 by 1080. And this is what I can see on the screen. Now, a lot of people aren't using high def and bigger monitors. A lot of people still have older monitors that they're using, and those older monitors are commonly found in a 1024 by 768 resolution. So we know that if we at least make our website to these specifications, that it's going to work for us a lot better. At least people who on older monitors can see our images. If we put stuff off to here in a 1920 by 1080 format, then someone on an older monitor might not see it, or it might get cropped out, or they might have to resize their monitor, and it's just not going to look right. So it's typically best if you actually build to a smaller version, so at least everyone can see that. Now later on, if your web developer tells you, no, let's just go ahead and do it to the bigger size, then go with what they're saying and talk it out with them. But for the sake of this course, we're going to use a smaller size so that we know that everyone can at least see that information. So we're going to build it to this size, and then we'll have our menu bar and our information and everything that we have written out here. Now, of course, websites aren't 768 because they actually proceed to go longer than that, where you actually scroll down. This is just the viewable image. So we can always add to this later on, and then you would have a scroll bar and you'd scroll up and down the website to see the rest of this information down here. Now this also works really good, these numbers, because their powers of 2 are divisible by 2, so we can break them up into chunks that work really good for us. So all these numbers will actually go into both of these dimensions very easily, so it makes it very easy to subdivide out the information. So let's go ahead and take a look now real quick at some of the things that we want to do in Photoshop. I'm going to draw a quick circle just to give you an example of one thing that we want to be aware of. So let me just put it right there, and I'll just fill it real fast so we can see this. Okay, now the first thing that we want to talk about is image size and canvas size. Right now, if we look at the image size and I go to pixels, we are at a 1920 by 1080 resolution. So if I looked at this full screen, it would cover my monitor completely. Now, if we change this to a smaller dimension size, and we're working with the image size right here, what this is actually going to do is it's going to scale the image, and you can see that it compresses everything and makes everything squished. So as we begin working, that's not something we want to do. We want to change the canvas size instead. So if I go to the canvas size and I change this to pixels, since that's what we're working in, and I actually change the canvas size the same amount, you see what it's going to do is it's going to clip the image, but it's not going to scale it down and make it squished. So as we begin working, if you need more space, you're going to want to change the canvas size, not the image size, because we don't want to scale that. So in our example, we can make this 1024, and typically say it would be 768, but let's just say that we want some more space because we know this is going to be a long document, a long website. So let's just put 2000, and what this does is this opens this up into a longer document, sort of like a website. And you can see I'm viewing this at 50% right now, so if I zoomed into 100%, this is actually what the website would look like on my monitor, and we can actually view this screen mode and full screen mode, and this is what the website would look like on my monitor. Now I wouldn't put any important information off to the sides here. All my important information would just go into this spot, so I know that even people on smaller monitors can at least view my website as they begin scrolling through it. So I'm going to escape out of that. I'm going to zoom back out so we can see everything. Now, of course, my information has been cropped here and we're losing a lot of information, and I still have my notes in this layer. So just to see this stuff, I want to go ahead and scale this all down. So let me select everything here. Let's see, deselect, Control D. Okay, there we go. And let me just scale my notes in here. So now I just have these for later. If I ever want to go back and kind of take a look at them, I can do that. The dimensions I don't really care about. That's fine. I'm just going to delete that out because I think you understand the point I'm trying to make here, that we just want to use this particular resolution. But I do want to keep these notes so I can always turn this layer on and look at it later. And I'm just going to add a new background layer and just make it white, just so I don't have that transparency going on. Okay, so now we have just I got my notes, turned my notes off. Now I just got a white basic layout that I can use here. All right, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is I went ahead and I changed my canvas size to 1024, so we know that we've got a good width, and I made it 2000, so it's extra long, so I can just kind of work that way. And then I can always come in here and trim this out or make it longer based on how this website starts turning out. Now, the next thing that we're going to want to use is a grid, because we want to make sure that everything is snapping to a grid. Again, this doesn't have to be a perfect science because we're doing a mock-up, but the closer that we can make things as we want them to actually look, as far as the heights and widths and what have you, the better it's going to be. So instead of just arbitrarily slapping things in, it'd be better to use a grid, so at least it makes a little more sense, especially when we hand it off to someone else. And the great thing about this is if you're working with a graphic design artist who has Photoshop, you can give them this PSD file, and then at least they can pull it up and say, okay, you made this so many pixels and what have you, and can kind of go from there. So I'm just going to go to View, and I'm going to go to Show, and then select Grid. And this is going to create a grid for us. Now I want to adjust this grid because you can see it's not really lining up really nicely here. It's kind of going off to the sides and not hitting perfectly where we want it to be. Go ahead and zoom in here so we can see this. So see how this kind of got cut off here, and this isn't a nice even grid. It's because it's using different dimensions than what we're using here. So click on Edit, go down to Preferences, and then select Guides, Grids, and Slices. And this is going to allow us to actually change the grid how we see fit. So if we go down to where it says grid, we have one grid line every inch with 8 subdivisions. Well, we're not even using inches, we're using pixels, so that's part of the problem. And we have 8 subdivisions. Let's go ahead and just make that one subdivision now so you can see. Oh, I didn't mean to hit enter, but you see what that does. Now we have one grid line every inch and no subdivisions, so it's just regular lines without any subdivisions. So go back here. Sorry, I didn't mean to close that. So we're going to change this to pixels, and now we have a grid line every pixel. Well, that's a little too much. We don't need that. And as I said before, this is all divisible by 2s, so we can use any of those numbers I showed you before: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. So let's try 64. So 64 looks good. It has some nice good sized boxes and divides us up really good. Now I could do, say, 8. That's a bit much. 16 is pretty good. But if we do 64, a bigger number, to get these bigger boxes, and then we use subdivisions, so let's say 4 subdivisions, now we can see we have nice thick lines every 64 pixels, and then it's divided by 4. So if you take 4 into 64, that's 16. So every one of these light lines is 16, and every one of these dark lines is 64. And you can set this up whatever feels best for you, but I think this is pretty good. This will give us good dimension size. And now when we go to view, make sure that we have snap on, snap to grid. So whenever we do anything, like say if I grab this box here, it's going to snap it to the grid points. And that's just going to make it nice and even for us. And like I said, this isn't a perfect science, but at least this will show us, give us some nice, easy things to work with. So if I'm making my menu bar up here and I have this selected, well, now we know that my menu bar is exactly 64 pixels long, height wise, and 1024 width wise. So that's a great tool. And then one thing else that you might want to turn on is the rulers. So if you go to view and you click on rulers here, you're going to see these rulers at the top, and these are great for aligning things up. Again, it's set to inches and we don't want inches. So double click on that. And when you double click on that, it's going to also bring up the same preferences. You can see guides, grid, and slices here, and above that, units and rulers. So now we can adjust the rulers property. So let's go to rulers, change this to pixels. And then now you can see it's showing our pixels of our document. We can hit OK. And this is great because now we can see where we want to divide this information up if we want to use the rulers as guides. And another great thing about the rulers is if you go off to where the ruler is and you click and drag, you get these lines, and these are great measurement tools. So it's very easy to drop a line in here and kind of see, okay, that's the center of my document, and I can align things up that way, and I can slice this however I want. So we'll be using these to kind of just lay down some basic things before we begin dropping stuff in there, so we can at least start breaking this up and seeing how we want this website to look. So that's how we set up our document. Again, we're 1024 wide, so at least we know that people on older monitors can view this. And like I said, as you begin working with the graphic designer, the web developer, or whoever is designing your site for you, when you hand this mock-up off to them, at least they have a good general reference point, and then y'all can work together at that point and change out anything you want. But at least we got a general sense of something that looks a little more cohesive, and is going to work a little nicer than just some random numbers punched in.